Before we start tonight's program, this episode will address various topics that we've discussed before. And a reminder about multiple sclerosis. I would think also, I think as we talk about the story about my dad, you realize that, there's certainly some issues with codependency and other things. So we'll get to that as we get through tonight's episode. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion is advised, as it's very sensitive to me, as you can tell by my voice. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. If you're looking for options with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. It's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And we would be having a disclaimer unless we talk about something that has been paramount in my mind and heart over the last 17 months, but quite frankly, the last 11 years, and that the National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Once again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also, we are still raising money for the National MS Society through a Venture to a Cure's fundraising page. This is the page that was created in conjunction with the Walk MS 2022 in Media, Pennsylvania. It was a really awesome event, and the National MS Society is an incredible organization. So if you want to donate money to the National MS Society, please go to rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. Once again, rebrand.ly/a venture to a cure. This fundraising effort will last through September 30th. Thank you to all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization or have even gone to the National MS Society to learn more about demyelination or multiple sclerosis. It touches me and over to 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis in so many ways. And we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. Away by James Whitcomb Riley. I cannot say, and I will not say, that he is dead. He is just away. With a cheery smile and a wave of hand, he has wandered into an unknown land and left us dreaming how very fair its needs must be, since he lingers there. And you, oh you, who the wildest yearn from the old-time step and the glad return, think of him faring on, as dear in the love of there as the love of here. Think of him still the same way, I say. He is not dead. He is just away. This is the Venture Forward. Good evening once again, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, overeating, obesity, and compulsive gambling, and it is an honor and pleasure to see all of you tonight on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter on what is a very important episode tonight. We did an episode about this a year ago, and I am going to have a moment of honesty with all of you tonight. I am going to go back to certain portions of that episode last year to help tell part of the story, as much as I will tell part of that story tonight as well. So there'll be a little bit of last year, there'll be a little bit of tonight, and we will get through it together. Couple of things before we get started. And funny enough, a programming note. We're actually doing a special edition of Venture Forward on Sunday night. And we're going to be talking about alcoholism and codependency revisited. And it's going to air at a special time, Sunday night, May 22nd at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. The reason why we're doing this episode on Sunday night is because it's leading up to my 3 years of sobriety. And I think there would be no better time to air it at a special time, Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, to talk about alcoholism, but moreover, what codependency's role is in alcoholism. So we'll discuss that. Also, later on next week, we will talk about me being 3 years sober, because this has been part of the story for sure. And as you'll hear in my dad's story tonight, that is part of his story as well. So again, special edition, Sunday night, May 22nd, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Before we get started, let's see who is in the room tonight on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. And the first person I see is Matt Haas, who says yo on Facebook. Matt, good evening to you. Hope you're doing well. On YouTube, we have April with a smiley face, and I blow a kiss right back at you, April. Good to see you this evening. We got Jamie over on YouTube who says, hi, everyone. Hi, Jamie. Hope you're doing well. We have Boomax, who is my mom, on YouTube, who says R.I.P. Jerry. We got Artfully Blind with Diana on YouTube, who says, good evening, everyone. Good evening to you. Hope you're well. And we have Matt, who just jumped over to YouTube on Awesome Wood Things. So there you go. So, yeah. Dad would have been 72 today. And, it's amazing because I recall recounting the story last year. I recall recounting the story right now. I recall basically the last 19 years without him on this earth. And I know that he is looking over me, looking over my family, looking over Mom, looking over all of us. He is an incredible personality. He's got a certain joie de vivre that if I think I am even in the ballpark of having, there is no way I can match the joie de vivre that my dad had and has. I still believe his spirit is fully alive and well. So I think about the lessons that my dad taught me, whether they were lessons that he taught me directly or lessons that he showed through example. And without me going to the clips of last year's episode, I will tell you this before we get into more detail. My dad had a way with words. My dad had an incredible sense of humor. I like to think that I got a sense of that. But my dad also lived a very addictive life. My dad had his fling with alcoholism. My dad had his fling with compulsive eating, and not compulsive eating, but basically obesity and overeating. And my dad had a stint with compulsive gambling. And, that sort of thing I picked up on. And I think it's something I continuously have fought and continuously am fighting and will continuously fight as part of my life. for sure. But dad had that. But I think the one thing my dad taught me, I remember talking to him in '02, the year before he passed away. And he told me about the most important things we look for in our friendships and relationships. Respect. We must never lose sight of respect. If it's a case of an interpersonal relationship, we should never lay a hand on anyone. They should never lay a hand on us. That was one thing he taught me, left, right, and sideways. The other thing is that if there is a problem, we should address it right away. We should never let it linger. And I am a big believer in that. He taught me that, and it's something I hold very steadfast to myself. I can't be remiss in not thinking about that. My dad was a sort of blue-collar worker who always came home from work with that dirty joke or whatnot, but always had a nugget of wisdom that came out of nowhere and would just leave you in absolute awe. And that is what my dad is. Someone who leaves you in absolute awe. Before we continue, let's go to the language of letting go. There are two key passages in Melody Beattie's book that I want to make known tonight. I think one talks about not stopping to live your life, and the other one talks about sadness. Let's go at it, shall we? So this is the language of letting go for yesterday, May 18th. Don't stop living your life. So often, when a problem occurs, inside or around us, we revert to thinking that if we put our life on hold, we can positively contribute to the solution. If a relationship isn't working, if we face a difficult decision, if we're feeling depressed, we may put our life on hold and torment ourselves with obsessive thoughts. Abandoning our life or routines contributes to the problem and delays us from finding the solution. Frequently, the solution comes when we let go enough to live our life, return to our routine, and stop obsessing about the problem. Sometimes, even if we don't feel like we have let go or can let go, we can act as if we have. And that will bring about the letting go we desire. You don't have to give up your power to problems. You can take your focus off your problem and direct it to your life, trusting that doing so will bring you closer to a solution. Today, I will go on living my life and tending to my routine. I will decide, as often as I need to stop obsessing about whatever is bothering me. If I don't feel like letting go of a particular thing, I will act as if I have let go of it until my feelings match my behavior. And that is the language of letting go. I think about that, and I think about how much we are so quick to shuffle things underneath the rug and let other things get in our way. If you think about the compulsions and addictions that we have, that is perfect fodder for that sort of thought. How many times did I think about sitting in line at a McDonald's or a Burger King or name your fast food place here to go closet eat? How many times did I think about the bottle of bourbon that was sitting next to the coffee maker? How many times was I thinking about the video poker machine at the casino? Because I was not addressing the things that were bothering me. And when we do that, we are just delaying the inevitable. We're not living our life. And we have to live our life. We have a present. It is called right now. It is called the present. We must never forget that. A couple of comments as I was going on here. Matt says, does that mean you'll carry around another heavy coin now that you'll be 3 years sober? Yes. That means I'll be carrying 8 coins on me. Ask me 6 years from now when I have, 18 more coins in my pocket. Rich Vibes, who's joining us on YouTube, says a very good evening to everyone. Evening, JV. Good evening to you, Rich. Hope you're doing well. And Matt is raising his hand. There you go. We must never lose sight of that. Must never lose sight of that at all. So we talk about the fact that we must not stop living our life, but let's talk about the flip side of that, which is obviously something that has me right now. I cannot think that straightly to do a very important episode. Sadness. Language of letting go for tomorrow, May 20th. Ultimately, to grieve our losses means to surrender to our feelings. So many of us have lost so much, have said so many goodbyes, have been through so many changes. We may want to hold back the tides of change, not because the change isn't good, but because we have had so much change and so much loss. Sometimes, when we are in the midst of pain and grief, we become short-sighted, like members of a tribe described in the movie Out of Africa. If you put them in prison, one character said, describing the tribe, they die. Why? Asked another character. Quote, because they can't grasp the idea that they'll be let out one day. They think it's permanent, so they die. Unquote. Many of us have so much grief to get through. Sometimes we begin to believe that grief or pain is a permanent condition. The pain will stop. Once felt and released, our feelings will bring us to a better place than where we started. Feeling our feelings, instead of denying or minimizing them, is how we heal from our past and move forward into a better future. Feeling our feelings is how we let go. It may hurt for a moment, but peace and acceptance are on the other side. So is a new beginning. God, help me fully embrace and finish my endings, so I may be ready for my new beginnings. And that too is the language of letting go. Sadness, as much as the other things we throw in the way of ourselves, can be as much as a hindrance if we don't choose to see through it, to start realizing that it's okay to feel, it is okay to grieve, it is okay to be one with this. But sadness is perfectly acceptable. And we must never lose sight of that. We must never lose sight of that. We have Marilyn, who joined us on YouTube with 3 waves and 3 purple hearts. 3 waves and 3 blue hearts right back at you. Hope you're doing well this afternoon, Marilyn. We also have a wave and a purple heart from Marilyn. We have a purple heart from Matt. And we have a wave and a purple heart from Marilyn back. It's good to see all of you tonight. We think about the family that we form, the communities that we form, and how they get us through very tricky and sad situations. I am very thankful for this group. I'm very thankful to be sharing this with all of you. I am debating right now whether or not to go to last year's clip or continue talking to it. Let me see how far I get before I realize I should just go back to the 2021 episode from back on 5/18/2021. Here is the story, pretty much. My dad was a gentleman who, as I mentioned before, had issue with overeating, had issue with drinking, had issue with gambling. And it was something that later on it caught up to him by way of the fact that he had diabetes. It took an incident on the job. He was a maintainer for the Bronx Whitestone Bridge, where he hit his head and he had a massive case of cellulitis off his forehead and had to go to the hospital. And when he got to the hospital, the doctor said, well, do you have any insulin? And my dad said, insulin for what? What are you talking about, insulin? And they tested his blood sugar and it was over 700. His glucose was over 700. And if you don't know, glucose should be about 100, nothing more than that. Anything even a little bit above that, and doctors will start saying you might have a diabetic condition. Anything below that, you might have hypoglycemia or something to that extent. So basically 100 is this sort of number, and you got to be very aware of that, especially if you're diabetic or can draw hypoglycemia. You should be testing your blood sugar more times than not. So anyhow, he had 700 plus blood sugar. They basically drained the cellulitis, and he became on a regimen of taking insulin every day and testing his blood sugar, and he had to, of course, adjust accordingly. It wasn't to say that there wasn't times along the way where he was thinking about drinking or this or the other thing, but he knew that that was part of the story. He had to be better with himself. I think the lesson therein is it teaches me that diabetes does run in my family. Dad was far from the only person that has diabetes in his family. It's something that I keep a constant eye on, especially when I go for a CDC or I go to the doctor to see what's going on. I must always be on top of where my blood sugar is. That's one. Two, my dad had a bit of a heart condition. In his lifetime, he had 4 heart attacks. 4. The fourth one, in 2003, took his life. He had a fatal heart attack, and it killed him. Now, that said, and the reason why I talked about the mental health thing at the start of tonight's show, and as at the start of many of the Venture Forwards, is the fact that when we don't take care of ourselves, we are basically committing suicide on a very slow fashion basis. In my dad's case, his girlfriend passed away 10 months prior, and his life became dwindling down. Very much so. And to the point where when he was feeling chest pain, he didn't call 911 himself. He called someone else. And that night he passed away. I'm very thankful to my mom, to my cousin Ian, to my Uncle John, because they were instrumental as far as at least making sure my dad got somewhere that night. It was very hard for me because I was living not in New York. I was living up in Connecticut. I was actually outside of New Haven at the time. I was living in Hamden. And that night was very difficult. It was difficult for my mom. It was difficult for Ian. It was difficult for Uncle John. And instead of calling 911 himself, he ended up calling someone else. Someone who's in this room. So that was really hard to think about, really hard to see. And golly knows, my regret is that I wasn't anywhere near it. I was one state away. And because of HIPAA regulation and whatnot, trying to get facts on what's going on with your dad ended up being next to impossible. But the reason why I say the thing about a slow suicide is the fact that he gave up. When he passed away, when my mom, myself, my girlfriend at the time, my buddy Josh from college, we went to his apartment in Queens. We noticed the walls, and they were yellow. He was smoking 2 to 3 packs a day. And I only reckon that from his girlfriend's death, he was smoking a lot more. And his apartment was just a nicotine-laden mess. But that is a microcosm of what's going on. The point I'm trying to make is that I have to be very well aware of my mental health. Because there was a situation where he gave up and he died of a fatal heart attack. Was it a widowmaker? I don't know. I don't know what kind of heart attack it was, but it killed him. It was his 4th heart attack. It killed him. So the lesson I learned from him is I got to take care of myself. We all have to take care of ourselves. And if there is some sort of hindrance in our way that we're not taking care of ourselves, we need to get help for it. Whether it's going to your PCP and staying on top of your doctors and seeing what you can do to make your physical health better, or going to a therapist and really working on what's going on upstairs. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. If there was anything that has been anything has resonated in this journey, is the fact that the two work hand in hand. So I have to be aware of that. Some comments. So I'm trying to keep it together here. Going back to the family comment before, Rich says, "Me too, JV. It's a wonderful family." Rich, you're definitely part of it, and thank you. Marilyn says, "You're also blessed to have each other. What an awesome family." 3 purple hearts, 3 blue hearts back at you, Marilyn. Love you. Thank you. We got Sammy Superstar joining us on YouTube. It says, "Hey, everyone." Hey, Sammy. Hope you're having a great evening. We have Brad, who's joining us on YouTube. It says, "Here and listening, feeling kind of yucky all of a sudden. Love you, John." Love you too, Brad. I hope you don't feel yucky for much longer. I hope you start feeling better. And Rich says, "Oh, John, wish I could give you a massive hug, bro." Well, I wish you could too. There's a giant ocean that's separating the two of us, but I definitely feel it, and I love you too, Rich. Thank you. Yeah, so my dad definitely had that going on. I think the other thing that I saw that my dad had a hard time dealing with was always saying yes and not taking care of himself. I think more times than not, he pushed other people in the way and taking care of other things because, I don't know, he's from a generation that did that. This is not any slight against the boomers. I love the boomers, but that was what they did. And that's certainly what he did. And the amount of pain that was on his face and aggravation that he was going through was evident because he allowed everything else to take over his affairs, his mind, his whole nine. Like, he had a very bad handle on that. And I think we talk about another addiction that he had, and that of drinking. Well, sure, everybody had a drink to take the edge off a bit, but the one night he would go out to drink became 2 nights a week, ended up becoming 3 nights a week. And he was drinking a lot. And alcoholism is another thing that I have to be very, very aware of. It runs in this family. So here's a situation where my dad definitely had these addictions playing resonant. It took a very strange situation. Is strange the right word? Probably not the right word. But I think I fell into the trap of codependency for a good long time, and I just forgot those important stories, those important facets, these important pieces that have been in the lives of this family. And more the reason why I am doing this project, more the reason why I'm talking about my sobriety, more the reason why I'm talking about my diet, more the reason why I'm talking about not gambling anymore. If not for anything else, just as a validation, just as you saw me, I'm clean, I'm sober, I'm not gambling. I get some basically an accountability buddy with all of you. So thank you for that. As much as everybody else in this community is an accountability buddy for all of you. So thank you. Thank you for all that. Going back to the comments. Marilyn says, "Sorry for your pain, JV. Sending you waves of strength and prayers. We all love you." I love you too, Marilyn. Thank you. May I ask a really good question that in what ways do amusement parks help with mental health? Well, There's two answers to that. The first answer is, well, we all want to be little kids again. We all want to go on rides. We all want to play games and stuff. That's answer number one. Answer number two is, we want to stand here in amazement because your friend, who is like a brother to you, is a dynamo when it comes to whack-a-mole and 9-foot Pac-Man. And like that, so to answer your question, taking the long way, very instrumental in helping one's mental health. And Matt, thank you. Thank you for all of that. And continued fun down the road, Hershey Park and whatnot. You're a great man. And I love you, bro. Without question. Whack-a-mole. Of all things, whack-a-mole. Rich says, I know exactly where you are. Dad basically gave up too. There's a lot of people that, have parents who are baby boomers or whatnot, that we're starting to realize exactly how much of this lingers. You want to throw in the effects of the last 2+ years and what that's done to all of our mental health. Lord only knows what it's done to them. Lord only knows what it's done to us. So we have to be cognizant of that, but we also have to be careful for ourselves, right? We can't just shuffle things under the rug. We have to take care of something when it's affecting us, whether it's mental or physical. We have to take care of it. As a very wise person told me within this past month, we must observe and not absorb. It's important to observe, certainly, but we can't absorb it, especially if some of us feel that we may be somewhat empathic. We must observe, not absorb. Because if we start absorbing everything else, we're not taking care of ourselves. Moreover, there's a lot more noise, and we end up in a deeper hurt than we had before we absorbed it. So we must observe and not absorb. Marilyn says, regarding amusement parks, they make you laugh and forget your troubles. Yes, they do. They absolutely do. And Matt says, well, then we better get you back to Hershey Park as soon as possible. That is Dr. Matt Haas. Just a brilliant, brilliant gentleman. Yes, Hershey Park indeed, for sure. I think about the fun things I did with Dad. My dad taught me two important things as far as the crazy sort of quirks that I have. Well, I have plenty of quirks. Who are we kidding, right? My dad gave me my love of bowling. My dad would take me bowling every Saturday. And without Dad, I wouldn't have fallen in love with bowling. I think that became part of my life for sure. There was, and then when I became a teenager, was it preteen, a teenager? I was going to Saturday League, Saturday Youth League, and my dad would always drive me to the bowling alley, and he was always rooting me on. He was always reminding me that I was landing on the wrong foot. I was landing on my right foot instead of my left foot. You're a right-handed bowler, you got to land on your left foot, not your right foot. I think they call that a backup bowler or everything. But my dad was an amazing gentleman when it came to that. He also taught me how to fish. I remember a time in right outside of Bayside in Queens where I went fishing with him. I think it was around Good Friday back in 85, 86. Can't believe I'm able to date this correctly. And I caught a giant flounder. And if I couldn't find that picture right now that I really wanted to get for Ecamm, I couldn't find it. But I remember that day, and I remember the sort of joy that was on my face for being able to catch a fish that big and realizing there's something really incredible about this. Just a day to go out fishing with your dad and catching flounder and whatnot. It was a really incredible day. And for the size of a flounder, it was pretty impressive. It's not one of those stories where you say, I caught a fish this big. It wasn't that big, but it was a very sizable flounder for sure. There was a picture of me right by the Bell Boulevard sign on the Cross Island Parkway in Queens. And me holding that fish. I can't find that picture. If you find that picture, let me know. Send it. Okay, bring the graphic up real quick. Let me do that. if you have that picture, there's only probably one person who has that picture. If you find it, send it to that email address, theventureforward@gmail.com. I need to have that picture. So, not in my basement, not in my office. But that's usually when things like that kind of turn up, right? So fishing. And then I think the other thing I have to thank my dad was the sort of heartfelt conversations I had with him when he drove me to college. He drove me back and forth from home on the island to Penn State a few times over the 9 semesters I was there. And we had some really awesome conversations, but we really just continued to bond as a father and son would. And he was kind of reminding me about the things that are important when we meet new people and being in new places, and just the nuggets of wisdom that he gave me as far as holding my own, never throw the first punch, stuff like that. He was always thinking that way. He was a blue-collar worker who worked for the Bronx Whitestone Bridge. What do you expect? But he was the sort of guy who would give me that sort of advice, and he was amazing at it. He, like I said, it's not always. Sometimes he would just spend time with you and complain about his job, as many blue-collar workers do. But then sometimes he bestows knowledge, and he bestows a dirty joke, and he talks about this and he talks about that. He is an incredible guy. And I think the lessons that I learned are the things that he did that I shouldn't be doing, and then the things that he did that have stuck with me forever. Lessons about how to treat other people, lessons about how to treat everybody in this life, lessons about how I should treat myself and how I should present myself, and just try to be as open, honest, and just caring as I can be. He definitely gave me a lot of that. I think the realization that he is never gone remains resonant. I'm not sure if you're into this, but I'm going to throw this out. Within the last month or so, we have birds outside this house, right? Bird feeder with lots of birds. Within the last month, there has been an influx of 3 to 5 cardinals who would come to the house, that could go to the bird feeder, and would just happier than everything. Obviously, I was feeding them every day, and it was a joy to feed the birds and refill the bird feeder. But to see cardinals of all birds pop up in the bird feeder and hang out and just be part of this house and up on the roof and flying around. Cardinals are a very wise bird. Cardinals are a very heart-giving bird. They say that when you have cardinals appear around you, that's a message from above. And if that's not a message from Dad, I don't know what is. So Dad, thank you. And Dad, I love you. And happy birthday, Dad. Couple other things I think remain resonant in this. I know that there are a lot more challenges for me to try to overcome. I know that I keep on trying to go bigger, better, faster, and stronger and whatnot. Spent most of my life morbidly obese. I have the ability to run faster. I ran a half marathon earlier this year. I'm running a full marathon in October. I know deep down inside, my dad's overlooking me. My dad is rooting me on. My dad's got my back. That's one. The second thing is, as I went up and down in weight 3 times, my dad was always proud of me when I've lost weight. When I was basically down to the lowest weight I was prior to now, back in 2002, one of the proudest people there were that were around me was my dad. My dad got to see me down under 200 pounds, healthier than I've ever been. This is the same guy who saw me eat 4 or 5 slices of pizza on a Saturday and asked a certain proprietor of Sal's Pizza Chef in Farmingdale, New York, to make something called the Mound, which was this slice of Sicilian pizza that had just copious amounts of mozzarella cheese on top of the pizza that was already baked with a lot of mozzarella. And then for shiggles, meatballs as well. That's after having 3 slices. Not really the most dietary friendly thing to do. But yet my dad was there for every second of it, and he was there with me. And when I was down to the weight I was in 2002, in an incredible year, as I lost the weight the first time, which should have stayed off, but of course the weight came back on twice more, he rooted me on. He was proud of me. When, right around the time I popped the question to my wife back in 2003, my dad he got to meet her once, and always was very cordial and kind, and had very just kind about the opinions about her, but always warned me to just stay true to myself and never fight, or never, no physical, and always make sure that you never leave the day angry. He was very adamant in stressing that up to the time he passed away, which passed away in July of 2003. I ended up proposing to my wife at the time, and at the engagement party there was an empty seat. And then fast forward to April of 2004, when I got married, there was an empty seat at the wedding. My dad means a lot to me. I'll always be thinking about my dad. I think I mentioned it the last time we talked about this last year. The period between May and July is a very tough period of time, culminating with my dad's birthday on May 19th, going to July 2nd, the day my dad passed away. And along the way, my uncle passed away around this time too. And it's just a tough time. But I think about the people that were father figures to me. I think about my dad. I think about my Uncle Rich. I think about the man who used to be my father-in-law. And I think about the 3 people that were really strong fatherly figures. The one thing I'm very blessed about is the fact that my parents were separated and subsequently divorced, I stayed close to my dad. We talked multiple times a week. Towards the end, my fault, and I take full responsibility for that. I didn't talk to him as much. I got busy with my job. It became once every other week, once every 10 days, which I should have talked to him more. But I can't bring that back up, and I must recognize it, which I do. And I know full well that my dad's looking at me, rooting me on, has all my love, and I give him all my love too. My hope is that at some point I continue to be very strong, and I do him proud from above, from whatever multiverse level he's on, whether it's heaven or whatnot, depending on your beliefs, right? But I know, like I said before, he's watching over me just as much as my Uncle Rich is. But that's the story of my dad. Now, I will say this. I probably was a little more put together in last time we talked about this, and I will set up a link to last year's episode when we talk about remembering Dad. But I think as we grow further, I know that he's watching over me, and I'm always thinking of him, and I got that. So let's talk about what's coming up, shall we? And we start with tomorrow. because tomorrow, last time I checked, is Friday. And on Fridays, we have a conversation about anything and everything with Mahas, Paul Burke, and all of you on VF Talks. It's Friday nights at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. It is a conversation about anything and everything, and definitely the most fun I have all week. I look forward to Fridays for that reason alone. So there's that. Sunday, a special episode of The Venture Forward where we talk about codependency and alcoholism. And I'll be at Sunday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. And then going to Thursday, next Thursday, we talk about me coming up to the 3-year sobriety point, where we'll talk about it. I officially am 3 years sober on May 30th, but we will talk about it 1 week from tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. But until next time, I'm going to say the same thing I say at the end of every Venture Forward and VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. Have a wonderful night. I will see you tomorrow night for VF Talks at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, right here on The Venture Forward. Take care of yourselves. Dad, I love you. And fly, be